He found the wounded alien at the far edge of his land just after sunset, when the light was turning orange and soft across the wheat. Evan Hale had been checking the fence line the way he did every evening, never expecting anything unusual. His life was quiet, simple, and shaped by routine. He fed his animals, mended broken boards, watered his crops, and went to bed early. Nothing exciting ever happened on his farm. That was why the long streak of fire he saw in the sky that evening made him stop in his tracks. It was bright, louder than a shooting star, and fell fast before disappearing behind the trees. For a moment he thought it might be a crashing aircraft, but the direction was strange. It looked like it came from space itself. He walked toward the field, unsure what he would find. The air smelled faintly burned, like metal and smoke. He moved through the tall wheat until he saw something dark lying on the ground. At first he thought it was a herd animal, maybe a deer, but when he stepped closer, he froze. It was a person, or at least shaped like one. The body was thin, the skin a soft silver color that reflected the fading sunlight, and the clothes were like nothing he had ever seen. Evan knelt slowly, keeping his hands where the figure could see them. The eyes opened large, dark, and full of fear. The alien was breathing hard, struggling to sit up but unable to move more than an inch. Evan could see wounds on her side, glowing a faint blue as if the blood or energy inside her was different. She looked cold. Her body trembled lightly, and she made a small, weak sound that did not match any human language. He spoke softly so he wouldn't frighten her. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." She stared at him with confusion, almost as if she expected the opposite. When she tried to lift her arm, it fell back down. Evan noticed how thin and exhausted she was. Even with fear in her eyes, she looked too weak to defend herself. Some part of him, the part that cared for every living thing on his land, could not leave her like that. He eased his hand forward and touched her wrist gently. Her skin felt cold, colder than a person should be. She flinched but did not pull away. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes were dulling again. Evan realized she might not survive the night if she stayed out in the open. He spoke again, slow and calm. "You're hurt. I have a barn nearby. Warm and safe. If you can't walk, I can carry you." The alien blinked as if trying to understand his words. She whispered something in a soft, musical voice, but he could not make out the meaning. He didn't need to. She was scared, but not violent. She had no weapon. She was alone. Whatever she had fallen from, whatever world she came from, none of it mattered in that moment. She needed help. Evan lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. She shook when the breeze touched her, and he realized the temperature drop was affecting her far more than it would a human. He quickened his steps toward the barn. Inside, the animals stirred at the scent of something unusual, but they did not panic. He laid her gently on a pile of fresh hay, but she shivered again. Her clothes seemed thin, almost decorative instead of useful. Without thinking twice, Evan removed his own thick blanket from the nearby hook, one he kept for cold nights while working late, and wrapped it around her. She looked at him with wide eyes, as if surprised that anyone would offer warmth freely. Her trembling slowed as the heat began to settle into her. Evan grabbed a lantern, brought it close, and tried to examine her wounds without touching anything that might hurt her more. He used clean water, cloth, and gentle hands to clean the burned edges around the glowing mark on her side. She winced, but did not pull away. He could see something strange about the wound. It pulsed faintly like some kind of energy, but at least it wasn't getting worse. He whispered, "You're safe here. No one's going to harm you." She tried to speak again, forming broken words. "Who? Man, why?" Evan blinked in surprise. She knew the word. That meant she knew something about his species. "Because you're hurt," he replied simply. Anyone would help someone hurt. Her expression said she did not quite believe him. But she didn't argue. She let her eyes close for a moment, then quickly opened them again, as if afraid of losing consciousness. Evan brought her water in a small cup. She hesitated, sniffed it, then drank slowly. The way she held the cup with shaking fingers made Evan straighten it for her. After a few minutes, she whispered her name, Larai. The sound was soft, but clear enough. "I'm Evan," he answered. "Nice to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances." She did not smile, but something in her expression softened. She looked around the barn with a careful gaze, eyes taking in the wooden beams, the straw, the gentle snorting of the horse in his stall. Everything must have been strange to her. Her world was likely nothing like his. Then her eyes darted toward the sky through a crack in the barn roof, and her breath quickened. Evan followed her gaze, but he saw nothing except the darkening evening sky. He frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" She struggled to sit up, gripping his arm with surprising strength for someone so weak. "They will come." Her voice trembled. "They hunt me." Evan felt a knot form in his stomach, but he didn't let it show. "Who?" She closed her eyes and whispered a word he could not understand, something like Soratia. Whatever it meant, the fear behind it was clear. She pointed weakly toward the stars. Ships. Searching. Evan listened carefully. At first, he heard only the normal nighttime sounds, the insects, the gentle wind, the shifting animals. Then, a faint hum drifted through the air, so quiet he almost dismissed it as imagination. But Larai's fear was real. She curled deeper into the blanket, clutching it, as if it were a shield. Evan blew out a slow breath. He didn't know anything about alien threats or starships or interstellar conflicts. He was just a farmer. But he knew how to hide someone. He had hidden injured animals plenty of times. He had shielded lost travelers from storms. Helping someone stay unseen was not new to him. He crouched beside her again. "Listen, Larai. You're safe here for now. My farm is far from town. No one comes here at night. Even if someone's looking, they won't find you easily." She stared at him hard, searching his face as if she could read truth the same way humans did. Her breathing slowed just a little. She wrapped the blanket tighter. Her silver skin had lost some of its coldness. The warmth was helping. Evan gave her more water and checked her wound again. He didn't understand alien biology, but he knew how to keep someone warm, hydrated, and calm. That would have to be enough until she was stronger. Outside, the hum faded. The stars brightened. The night settled. Evan stayed close, sitting on an overturned crate, watching her carefully in case she needed anything. The barn felt small but peaceful, glowing with the soft light of his lantern. Larai's eyes fluttered as sleep pulled her in, but she kept glancing toward him, as if afraid he might disappear. He offered a reassuring nod. "Rest. I'll keep watch." Rust. Her eyes finally closed completely. The rise and fall of her breathing became steady. She looked almost peaceful, wrapped in his old blanket, like it belonged to her. Evan leaned back against a wooden post, listening to the quiet moments of the night. He didn't know who was searching for her, or why. He didn't know how serious the danger truly was. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever had happened in the sky that evening had brought Larai into his life for a reason, and he would protect her as long as she was under his roof. He glanced toward the dark field outside, toward the place where he had found her. A faint trail of burned wheat still marked the path she had fallen through. He wondered if someone else might come following that trail. He wondered if the hum in the sky would return louder. The calm night suddenly felt fragile. Still, he stayed awake, guarding the barn, guarding Larai, a simple farmer watching over a stranger from the stars, unsure that the morning sun would rise on the same peaceful world he had always known. But he didn't regret giving her his blanket. It was the first thing he would do again, if he had the chance. The morning light came slowly, touching the barn roof with a warm glow. Evan had not slept at all. He sat on the same wooden crate where he had spent the night, watching Lerai breathe under his blanket. Every few minutes he stood, checked the doors, and stepped outside to make sure nothing strange had appeared in the sky. Everything looked calm, but the memory of that soft humming sound stayed in his mind. It was too unusual to ignore. When Lerai finally opened her eyes, she looked confused at first. Her hand gripped the blanket tightly as if she did not believe she was still alive. When she saw Evan sitting nearby, her expression softened. She tried to sit up but moved too quickly and winced, pressing a hand to her side. "Easy," Evan said, stepping closer. "You're still weak." She blinked slowly, as if gathering her strength. "I remember falling," she whispered, in a shaky voice. "And the cold. Everything was cold." "You're warmer now," he replied. The blanket helped. Lerai looked at the blanket again, running her fingers across the rough fabric like she was studying a rare object. "You gave this to me," she said softly, almost as if she could not believe it. "Of course," Evan answered. "You needed it." Her eyes lifted to his with a strange look one he could not name. Gratitude, confusion, maybe disbelief. "Humans," she murmured. "I was told, you survive with fear and suspicion, but you show care to a stranger. You do not understand." Evan smiled a little. "Well, you looked like someone who needed a hand. Doesn't matter if you're human or not." She seemed to think deeply about his words, as if his simple kindness was something rare in her world. Evan brought her a cup of warm, herbal tea he had made earlier. Lerai accepted it with both hands, sniffed the steam carefully, then took a small sip. Her face relaxed a little. "Warm. Good. That's the idea," Evan said. "You'll feel better if you drink slowly." When she finished a few sips, she sat straighter, bracing herself. "I must tell you something." Evan nodded calmly. "Go ahead." She took a slow breath. "I am not an explorer. I am a scout. My people are in a war against a powerful ruler known as the Sovereign Commander. He wants every world under his rule. Many have already fallen." Evan felt a chill travel down his spine. "And you're part of the group fighting him?" "Yes," she replied. "I carry information that could change the war. The enemy knows this. That is why they chased me. My ship was hit. I tried to hide my crash, but they saw enough. They are searching this world." Evan's heart tightened. He looked toward the barn doors again. "So, they could come here?" She nodded slowly. "If they find me, they will not stop with me. They will destroy anything around me. Anyone helping me would be in danger." Evan stared at her for a moment, letting the truth settle. Danger, not small danger, but the kind that came from the sky, the kind that didn't care about humans or farms or peaceful lives. He crossed his arms. "That is why you must leave me," Lerai said firmly. "If I stay here, I bring harm to your home." Evan shook his head. "Not a chance. I'm not leaving you out here alone to freeze or get caught. If trouble comes, I'll deal with it." She looked shocked. "Evan, I told you this is not a human conflict. This is a war that spans many worlds." "And," Evan said with a shrug, "someone lying wounded in my barn is my business." Lerai opened her mouth, wanting to argue, but she had no words. Humans, it seemed, were not as simple as the stories she was told. He gave her more tea and checked the wound again. The glowing energy in the injury seemed less bright, but she still flinched when he cleaned it. His hands were gentle, and she watched him with quiet eyes, almost studying the way he worked. "You fix things often," she said softly. "Farmers have to," he replied. "Animals, fences, roofs, machines, you learn to mend whatever breaks." She nodded thoughtfully. "Your skills may be small in your world, but they hold meaning in many others. Evan didn't know what she meant, but she seemed sincere. After tending to her wound, he helped her sit in a more comfortable position and brought a few pieces of fruit and bread. She tasted each item carefully, surprised by the sweetness of the fruit and the softness of the bread. Then she put her hand over her chest, where her heart should be. "This is good," she whispered. Evan chuckled. "Glad you like it." As the morning passed, she grew stronger. Her voice steadied, and she could move without trembling as much. She tried standing once, but could only take 2 steps before needing to lean against him. Evan supported her without hesitation, and she looked up at him with an expression mixed with embarrassment and respect. "You don't need to help me this much," she said quietly. "Yes, I do," he replied. "You're on my land. You're my responsibility now." She blinked at him slowly, almost touched. "Responsibility," she repeated softly, as if trying to understand the human idea fully. Later that afternoon, Evan stepped outside to check the skies again. The air was cool, carrying the scent of his fields. The world looked peaceful. No threats, no ships, no strange lights. But he did not trust the quiet fully. Something was coming. He could feel it in his stomach. When he returned inside, Lerai was sitting upright, wrapped in the blanket, watching him carefully. Her eyes were alert, scanning every corner of the barn like a soldier trained to notice danger. "You heard something?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Faint. Far in the sky. A signal. Maybe a response. I cannot be sure." Evan sat beside her. "What does that mean?" "My distress beacon triggered when I crashed," she said, lowering her eyes. "I could not disable it. Anyone who was searching for me all sides knows I landed on this world." Evan frowned. "All sides?" "My people," she said softly, "and the Sovereign Commander's hunters." Silence filled the barn for a moment. Evan's thoughts raced. If her allies found her, that was good. But if the wrong ships arrived first, "Do you have any way to contact your own people?" he asked. She shook her head. "My communicator broke in the fall. Only my beacon works, and it sends a signal to anyone listening." Evan exhaled slowly. "Well, then, we stay alert. Until help comes." Lerai studied him with a long, quiet gaze. "You should fear this. You should be hiding, running, protecting yourself." "I am protecting myself," Evan said calmly. "My home is here. My life is here. If trouble comes, I'll deal with it." She looked away for a moment, clearly moved. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "You act with courage when it is not logical." Evan gave a small grin. "Maybe that's what makes us human." Before she could respond, a sudden sound broke the calm. A faint, distant rumble rolled across the sky. Low, steady, unnatural. Evan stepped outside instantly. Lerai tried to follow, but was too slow. She watched from the doorway as Evan scanned the sky. He didn't see anything at first. But then, a thin, silent streak moved high above the clouds. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything from Earth. And it was moving in a perfect line, too smooth, too controlled. Evan walked back into the barn. "Something's out there." Lerai closed her eyes, her face tightening. "They found my beacon. Someone is coming. But I cannot tell if they are mine or his." Evan looked at her firmly. "Then we prepare." She stared at him, almost in awe. "You would stand with me?" "Of course," he said without hesitation. "You're hurt. You're alone. You're in my care. That's all that matters." Lerai lowered her head slightly, a gesture of respect from her people. "Then, I trust you, Evan Hale." The sun dipped slowly toward the horizon as the two of them waited in the quiet barn. Lerai wrapped herself deeper in the blanket he had given her. Evan sat beside the barn door, tools nearby. Eyes, watching the sky. Neither of them knew who would land first, friends or enemies. But one thing was certain. The peaceful life Evan once knew was already changing. And this was only the beginning. The sun had not fully set when the first strange vibration entered the air. It was soft at first, almost like distant thunder, but steadier, too steady to be natural. Evan stepped outside the barn and looked toward the sky. The clouds glowed faintly with a light that did not belong to the evening. He felt his heart beat faster, not with fear but with a heavy tension that warned him something big was about to happen. Inside the barn, Lerai tried to stand, holding the blanket around her shoulders. She leaned against the wall as she watched him from the doorway, her eyes alert even though her body remained weak. "Is it them?" she whispered. "I don't know," Evan answered. "But something's here." The vibration grew louder, the air seemed to thicken, and then a bright flash lit the sky. Evan shielded his eyes as a long, sleek ship descended. It did not roar like human aircraft, it hummed quietly, like a giant machine moving with perfect balance. The ship's lights passed over the fields, turning the wheat golden white for seconds at a time. Larai's breath caught. "That is not the Sovereign Commander's design," she whispered with a shaky exhale. "Those are resistance markings." Evan blinked. "Your people?" "Yes," she breathed. "They found me." But as the large ship steadied itself in the air, two smaller ships sped down on either side of it. Then more appeared, 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. Soon the sky was filled with the shapes of ships, forming tight lines as they approached. The soft vibration became a chorus of low hums. Evan stared in disbelief. "How many?" he murmured. "Many units travel in groups," Lerai explained. "If the beacon said I carried important data, they would send an escort squad." Evan swallowed, unsure how to process the sight. Ships began landing in the open fields surrounding his farm. One by one, they settled gently on the ground, their engines leaving circular patterns in the wheat. Dust rose into soft clouds. The air pulsed with energy. It was a gathering unlike anything he had seen or expected. Lerai stepped out of the barn doorway, still unsteady. She leaned lightly on the wooden frame to keep her balance. "They are here to protect me," she said. "But they will be cautious. They will not know who you are." Evan nodded. "Then let's make sure they know you're safe." As the first group of aliens exited their ships, Evan felt the same shock he had felt when he first saw Lerai. Their skin had similar silvery tones, though their armor reflected different colors: deep blues, greens, and soft glowing marks along their arms. Some stood taller than humans, others slightly shorter, but all carried themselves with the confidence of trained fighters. They spread out quickly, forming a defensive circle around the barn. Their helmets scanned the area with soft beams of light. They moved silently, efficiently, with a discipline that told Evan they were well-trained and battle-tested. One of the fighters spotted him and raised a weapon. Evan stopped moving right away, lifting both hands slowly to show he wasn't a threat. Dozens of armored heads turned toward him. For a moment the world felt frozen. Lerai pushed herself forward. "Stop," she called out, her voice still weak but clear enough. The fighters immediately turned toward her. Several lowered their weapons in surprise. One of them, the tallest among them, wearing armor with brighter markings, stepped forward. "Scout Lerai," he spoke in her language, which Evan could not understand. But he could read the relief in the soldier's posture. Lerai responded in the same tongue, pointing toward Evan. She spoke with clear emotion, her gestures gentle but firm. The leader looked at Evan for a long moment. Then he pressed a symbol on his chest, and his helmet folded back, revealing his face's sharp features, silver eyes, and a look of deep curiosity. "You are the human who sheltered our scout?" he asked in accented but understandable English. Evan nodded cautiously. "She was injured. I helped how I could." The leader studied him carefully. His expression softened slightly. I am Commander Rael. Larai is valuable to us. Her survival matters greatly. Several fighters behind him lowered their weapons fully, their posture becoming less tense. Larai took a step closer, holding the blanket tighter. She spoke again to Rael, and though Evan did not know the words, he knew what she was saying. She was telling them about the blanket, the water, the tea, the care he had shown her. Her voice shook with emotion as she described the night she had spent in the barn. Commander Rael listened with a deepening seriousness. When she finished speaking, he turned toward Evan with a look that carried unexpected respect. You gave warmth to one of ours, Rael said. You offered shelter. In our culture, this is a noble act. It means you see life as worthy, even if you do not know it. Evan shrugged lightly. She needed help. That's all. Rael tilted his head. Humans often hide from danger. You moved toward it instead. Evan glanced at Larai, then back at Rael. Didn't feel right leaving her out there. More ships landed behind the first wave, 20, 30, maybe even more. The fields filled with fighters, nearly 100 of them, forming a scattered army across his land. Evan had never seen so many armed beings in one place. Their armor glittered in the last rays of the sun, their weapons powered but angled downward now that they knew their scout was safe. Larai stepped beside Evan, still leaning slightly, but standing taller than before. He protected me, she said quietly, even when he did not understand the danger. Rael looked at Evan again. Then, today, human, you have earned our trust. Before Evan could respond, two fighters shouted something in their language. The sky glowed red with a new light, darker, sharper, colder. 3 dark ships approached from the clouds, their shapes jagged and threatening. These ships did not hum. Softly they growled, crackled, and broke through the sky like tearing metal. The fighters reacted instantly, forming defensive lines and rushing to protective positions. Larai inhaled sharply. Them, she whispered. Those are the Sovereign Commander's hunters. Evan felt his pulse quicken. Right now? They found us? This fast? The beacon reached everyone, Larai said. They would not wait. Commander Rael shouted orders. His fighters moved with perfect synchronization, activating shields that shimmered like translucent walls. But Evan could tell they were outnumbered. The hunters' ships descended aggressively, ignoring any attempt at peaceful approach. Evan turned to Larai. You need to get inside. No, she said firmly. I must stay with my people. Then stay behind me at least, he said, positioning himself so he could see the sky and her at the same time. Larai looked at him, surprised by his instinct to protect her again, but she said nothing. The hunter ships fired warning shots into the ground, each blast sending dirt flying. Evan flinched but didn't run. Fighters leaped into defensive stances, raising shields as the enemy circled overhead. Commander Rael shouted toward Evan. Human! Stay close to us. Their weapons do not care about your world. Evan nodded but didn't move from Larai's side. As the first blast of light shot across the field, illuminating the sky in harsh colors, Evan realized everything he had feared last night was true. His quiet farm had become a battlefield. The peaceful night he wished for was long gone. And yet he didn't feel regret. Not for helping Larai. Not for giving her his blanket. Not for standing with her, now. He only felt a growing resolve. If the enemy was coming to take her, he would not let them do it, not while he had breath in his lungs and ground beneath his feet. The fighters tightened their circle. The hunters descended. The first battle line formed across Evan's land. And the moment the enemy forces touched down, the real fight began. The enemy ships landed with a heavy thud that shook the ground under Evan's feet. Dust rose in thick clouds as the dark, sharp-edged vessels unfolded their ramps. The night sky glowed red from their engines, and the air grew tense as if holding its breath. Evan stood beside Larai, who had wrapped his blanket around herself again. Even weak, she tried to keep a steady posture. Her eyes stayed locked on the enemy ships, with a look that mixed fear and determination. Commander Rael raised his voice, shouting orders in his own language. His fighters moved fast, forming a clear shield line around the barn. Bright blue barriers shimmered as they locked into position. Evan watched the formation with wide eyes. These fighters were disciplined, prepared, and ready to protect their own. Still, he knew the enemy ship carried danger far beyond anything he had ever seen. The first enemy soldiers stepped out of the ship. They wore dark armor that looked heavier, stronger, and shaped with cruel edges. Their movements were slow, but confident, like predators walking into familiar territory. The leader of the hunters approached with long strides. His eyes, glowing red, scanned the field, as if calculating everything at once: distance, shields, weaknesses. Evan felt Lerai tremble slightly, though she tried to hide it. "That is the Sovereign Commander's elite hunter," she whispered. "He leads small capture units. They only come when the mission is too important for ordinary soldiers." Evan looked at her. "He came for you." She nodded slowly. "And for what I know." The hunter leader raised his voice, speaking in a deep, harsh tone. Rael stepped forward, responding with calm authority. They spoke in Lerai's language, but Evan could tell from their gestures and the rising intensity that the hunters demanded Lerai's surrender. Evan's jaw tightened. He whispered to her, "You're not going with them." Her voice shook. "If I stay, you are in danger. If I go, our worlds suffer." "You staying is still the right choice," Evan said quietly. "We find a way." She looked at him with eyes full of emotion, fear, gratitude, and something deeper. "You do not even know our war," she whispered. "I know kindness deserves protection," he replied simply. Before she could answer, the hunter leader fired the first shot. A red beam struck Rael's shield, shaking the ground with a sharp explosion. The resistance fighters instantly responded, sending streams of blue energy toward the hunters. The quiet farm transformed into a battlefield of flashing lights. Evan grabbed Lerai's arm and pulled her behind a thick wooden beam for cover. He felt the wood shake as stray beams hit the barn walls. "Stay low!" he shouted over the blasts. Lerai pressed close to him, her breathing quick. "Evan, I should help them," she said, trying to stand. "You're barely strong enough to walk," he argued. "You can help by staying safe." Outside, Rael was giving orders, shifting his fighters to keep the enemy from surrounding them. Evan saw how the enemy pushed forward with brute strength while the resistance fighters used speed and coordination. But the hunters were gaining ground. Evan looked around the barn. His mind raced. He might not have alien weapons, but he knew his land better than anyone. "Lerai," he said suddenly, "your people's shields, they protect from energy weapons, right?" "Yes," she replied, "but not from physical impact." Evan grinned slightly. "Good." He ran to his old farm tools, grabbing ropes, iron hooks, and a heavy metal bucket. Lerai watched in confusion. "What are you doing?" "Using what I have," he said. "Your people fight with lights and beams. I fight with the land." He tied a long rope to the overhead beam and then to a pile of heavy equipment. His plan was simple, but effective. Create falling traps in places the enemy would cross. Lerai finally understood and nodded slowly. "Your strategy? It is clever. It's just farming tricks," he replied. "But it'll work." He moved quietly, setting up 2 more traps near the barn entrance. Outside, the enemy pushed closer. Blue shields flickered as the fighters struggled. Rael shouted for regrouping. The hunters advanced with slow confidence, firing non-stop blasts. One hunter broke through the front line and charged toward the barn. Evan held his breath. The soldier stepped exactly where Evan hoped he would. The rope snapped, and the heavy iron bucket and tools came crashing down, striking the soldier directly. The hunter stumbled, fell, and dropped his weapon. Rael saw it happen and shouted something in surprise. Larai blinked in disbelief. Evan, you defeated one of them with tools? Doesn't matter what you use, Evan replied. Only matters that it works. The second trap fell minutes later, knocking another attacker to the ground. The resistance fighters gained a moment to breathe. Rael shouted for his warriors to regroup near Evan's position. They responded quickly, forming a shield wall that protected the barn from the hunter advance. But the enemy leader was not done. He aimed a powerful cannon-like device at the barn. Evan noticed the strange glow building. Larai, that one looks dangerous. Rarai. She gasped. A gravity pulse cannon. That can tear through anything. Evan grabbed her hand. Then we move. He pulled her out through the back door of the barn, guiding her around the animals and out toward the irrigation ditch near the field. The cannon fired behind them. A heavy shock wave rolled through the ground like a crash of thunder. The barn shook violently, and part of the roof collapsed. Larai stumbled, nearly falling, but Evan steadied her. She looked at him breathlessly. You could have left me, and you could have stayed hidden, he said. But here we are, together. Her eyes softened deeply, but the moment ended as more hunters approached from the side. Rael and his fighters rushed forward again, pushing back the attackers. The battle grew fiercer. Evan watched Rael move like a skilled protector, shielding his squad and firing precise shots. The resistance fighters regained control of the area inch by inch. The enemy leader growled and aimed at Larai again. Evan reacted without thinking. He grabbed a metal shovel and threw it toward the cannon. It struck the device at the right angle, causing the hunter to jerk backward and misfire. The blast hit a nearby tree instead. Rael shouted in his language. 3 fighters charged forward, overwhelming the hunter leader and forcing him to retreat toward his ship. More hunters followed him, boarding quickly as they realized their advantage was gone. The ships lifted off the ground with sharp engines roaring. The night sky blazed red as they retreated. The resistance fighters fired after them but stopped once the enemy disappeared into the clouds. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the resistance shields shutting down. Evan let out a long breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Larai leaned against him, exhausted, but alive. Rael approached, his armor scratched and smoking from battle. He looked at Evan with deep respect. Human Evan Hale, he said. Your strength is not in weapons, but in courage and heart. Today, you stood with us. You fought with us. And you protected Larai when she could not protect herself. Evan shrugged lightly. I just used what I had. Rael placed a hand over his chest. Your actions will be remembered among our people. Larai stood beside Evan, still wrapped in his blanket. She looked at him with gentle, grateful eyes. You changed the path of my life, she whispered. Your kindness, it carries more power than you know. Evan smiled softly. Anyone would have helped someone who needed it. No, she said with certainty. Not anyone. You. Rael stepped back as several resistance fighters gathered. They bowed their heads slightly toward Evan, a gesture of honor. Your farm, Rael said, is now a protected zone. No enemy will touch it as long as we live. Evan nodded quietly. It was strange to think of a simple farm becoming a marked place of importance across galaxies. But he accepted the promise. Larai squeezed his hand gently. I owe my life to you. One day, if you choose, we will take you to see the stars. Evan glanced at the sky, then back at her. Maybe, but for now, I'll stay right here. The fighters prepared to leave, their ships lighting up the field. Larai stepped closer to Evan, her voice soft. This world is safer because of you. He shook his head. Just did the right thing. She gave him a warm, grateful look, one he would never forget. Moments later, she boarded Rael's ship. Evan watched as the ships rose into the sky, disappearing into the dark night. The fields grew quiet again. His barn was damaged, the wheat flattened in some places, and the air still smelled of smoke and energy. But his heart felt calm. He had protected someone in need. He had stood firm even when the sky filled with danger. And somewhere, across distant stars, a new story began spreading about humans. The kind of story that made entire galaxies see Earth differently. A story about a farmer who gave a wounded alien his blanket and stood against 100 enemies to protect her.